What's up, people? Welcome to a brand new edition of Wrestle Update. I'm your host, as always, Dylan Fox. Joining me, because I cannot do this without you, just a legend in all of our midst, the one who's accomplished and is currently living his dreams legit, Nello de Angelis. I'm honored to be in your presence right now.
Hey, my video game Deep Cuts is out. I can say that legally now. It's on Meta Quest. It'll be coming soon to Steam PC VR and PlayStation VR 2 as well. If you're listening, check it out. Even if you don't have a headset, wishlist it. Just throw a bone. But yeah, very satisfying day. It released today. We're recording this on Tuesday. So it's been a hell of a 72 hours paired with Revolution, really. It's been really nice because Sunday I had Revolution, Monday night I had my own Wrestle Club, and we watched what did we watch? It was a Kankuro Hoshino versus Asami Kodaka from like 2016. What else? Kiyoshi Tamura versus Josh Barnett. Definitely the best Josh Barnett match I've ever seen. And then one of my favorites, and I think I give this match like 4 3/4 because I think it's one of the all-time greatest babyface performances, and it would be a 5-star if she actually won. But Mayumi Ozaki versus Saori Ano from Oz Academy in like 2020, where it's like a 6-on-1 the whole match. Love it.
I'm so happy you watched that Tamura and Josh Barnett match.
It was great. U-Style's sick. I got to check out more of it.
Oh, yeah. Like, that is my jam. When I voted for the greatest wrestler ever list in 2016 on PWO, Tamura was in, like, my top 10. Just a legendary wrestler in ring. That U-Style stuff gets really underappreciated as well, just because it was, like, Rings is a company that was huge. And U-Style, like, it was big. They had that good run for a decade or so with all of the after everyone split again and UWF2 split up in 1990. You had Rings, UWFI, and Fujiwara Gumi, and Rings was the one that outlasted all the other ones. And I just that's such a special time period that really can't be recreated ever. And Barnett, I mean, that is my dude. I really respect him a lot. And he was, I mean, obviously a very talented MMA fighter, a shoot fighter, but also wrestling style back in that day, 20 years ago or so. He was cool, man. So love it. Love that your game came out, Deep Cuts. Everybody check it out. Get on that VR style. Very happy to know it's coming to PlayStation as well on there. Listen, Nello, I don't have the kind of rig sustainable for this kind of action all in one place that Deep Cuts brings you. I saw your IG stories of what's going on in that game. I know what's going on. I saw you making the interview rounds. I mean, I feel like you're becoming a gaming celebrity right now.
No, I'm so grateful to have this game out because, like, the gaming industry is so volatile. There are people who, you meet people who work in gaming for 10 years who have worked on multiple projects but have never actually shipped a game, because a lot of the time you'll work on something for X amount of years and then it'll get canceled, and then you go to another project, right, and that'll get canceled. So to have been able to create something that I get to share with the world and then I get to talk to people about it, it's badass. And it's a privilege, and now we get to talk about wrestling. What's better than that? Nothing.
Living the dream. I love that. You're not the only one that accomplished things, though. As I told you, I put up my portable closet yesterday.
Let's go.
That's right. Obviously, me moving was a saga, and so many things have happened since then, but long story short of it, the room does not have a closet, so I got my own. I ended up getting a portable closet. It's very nice. It even zips up and has a close thing to it. Me and my sister put it together. So while you were creating the beautiful art of video gaming, uh, I created a closet to put my clothes in. So now I might not have as many boxes in my room. So it depends. If you're a fan of boxes, if you love cardboard boxes, then this could be seen as a negative. But I just think it looks more spiffy this way. So I'm going for it, people. Just briefly, I do want to say that shout out to everybody who listened to our Elimination Chamber episode. We really appreciate that. I know, like a lot of the inmates that did some huge numbers, probably because everyone was checking out the Elimination Chamber page out there. So if we have any new listeners, thank you guys for tuning in. Really appreciate that. Definitely, we will be back on the road to WrestleMania eventually, but right now the AEW had to take place. Well, it did take place. It didn't have to take place, but it did take place, and we have to cover it for that. So hopefully everybody's checking it out anyway. Lots of good stuff to talk about. Lots of crazy things going on in wrestling. Me and Nello were talking off the air about Shuri and Sariism like 7. There's just great wrestling all over the world. Takeshita versus Angel de Oro in Mexico was like a match of the year level match, in my opinion, as well. If you want to watch some CMLL, and you guys are already familiar with Takeshita, spoiler alert, I actually think that match might have been better than the one we're about to talk about, and that's saying something considering the ratings on that. So wherever you like wrestling, whatever style you prefer, it's just a really badass time. The video game world is really volatile, as you mentioned, to be honest. There's a lot of companies like, I don't know how close you pay attention to BioWare and what's going on right now, but literally Dragon Age the Veilguard got released for free on PlayStation Plus this month. And that's like a really bad sign because it just came out a few months ago and it was like a huge game. It took 10 years to make, and all the people. The problem is EA is gutting BioWare. Like, long story short of it, and everybody who worked on Mass Effect and Dragon Age, the originals, are long gone at this point. Like, so it shows you how crazy the world video games are. So, really happy to see you succeed, and I'm hoping some big things are coming for deep cuts and everything else you're going to do in the future. But that said, we'll say one more thing too about WWE real quick, because we kind of spoke about it on the last episode, but definitely recommend the Rhea Ripley and Io Sky match from Raw from last week. One of a few legit upsets, I would say, in wrestling. For Io to get the belt, I think was just an awesome moment. It really made her feel like a superstar. And I think this goes to show, and I think AEW could learn a lesson from this, and WWE is guilty of this a ton of times. Don't get me wrong at all. But if you can really time a shock win right, it could easily successfully elevate somebody. You have to time it right, and it has to be meaningful. That's the thing. Like, this win assures her spot at WrestleMania in a major match. It can't just be like Andretti versus Jericho, and then it never gets followed up on. That didn't help anybody ultimately. But in this case, the next week she was getting pops over Bianca and Ripley, who were two of the biggest baby faces on the roster. And I think it was really due to the great match that they had and the upset win they had, that she had. So that whole show was awesome. There was a great title matches up and down. I thought it was one of the best Raws in a long time. The show where Io won the title. The MSG Raw wasn't nearly as good, to be honest. But we'll see where they go. As we talked about, I said that they should make Cena's comeback, like, first speaking appearance, a big deal, and they did that. They're saving it for Belgium next week, so we're going to see Cena explain that heel turn that had so many people talking at the end of the day. But good stuff, good follow-up to EC, and hopefully they continue to have a good show heading into WrestleMania. As far as AEW goes, Revolution from the Crypto.com arena. Many people would say that the Crypto.com arena is the Staples Center. Isn't that weird? Because it's going to be very soon, and we may already be there. But we're going to be at a point where nobody knows of it as Staples Center. Like, that'll be like ancient history to a lot of people. And I don't know if I'm ready for that at the end of the day. But regardless, Crypto.com arena, everything about this show going into it, before we get into the actual show, I'm going to just throw it out to you, Nello. We covered Grand Slam in Australia. We talked about a lot of things. What was your vibe heading into Revolution here? Like, how are you feeling about the show? Were you excited? Like, how were you feeling?
There were certain things I was excited for, definitely. So there were certain things that I was indifferent about, but there was nothing I was outright dreading. Because I would say mostly everything at least had some intrigue to it. More than anything, I was happy to have something to do Sunday night. What about you?
Well, I definitely agree that it was something to do. And we did it. At the end of the day, we both watched this show. The thing with this show, to me, I will say going into it, my number one fear, I think we all agree that the main event we were not happy with. Like, I didn't see a lot of positivity coming from that main event going into the show, and even less coming out of it, which we will get to. But I will say a lot of people thought that they had, I won't say fixed the Death Rider stuff, but they did a better job leading up to this than in prior months. I had seen a lot of talk of that going in. Clearly, those people are fools based on what happened. But I will say that I did hear that a lot. I was just dreading it because I don't want to see Cope in main events under any circumstances. But my main fear, among all else, was that there were so many singles matches on this show that stuff that we knew was going to be great, or we thought was going to be great, would not get enough time. Something was going to have to get shortchanged in my mind. But, I mean, clearly that's not true. Ultimately, based on how the show actually went, they did not mind having this show go long. They did not mind giving everybody as much time as they needed, and sometimes too much time in certain cases. Did you watch the 0 Hour show?
I did not this time. I did not have time to catch it beforehand.
Yeah, I checked in just in time. I was like halfway through the Big Boom AJ match. There's nothing to really comment on it. It was just like, MXM collection or goofs. You had Rizzler dressed as Orange Cassidy. At least Mark Briscoe got something. We also had the Hologram and Commander taking on Blake Christian and Lee Johnson. What happened to the judge? Like, remember we watched Ring of Honor.
Lee J.
Yeah. What happened to the judge?
I have no clue.
Yeah, like I said, why can't they push him? Like, he needs to be doing something at least. Come on now, don't leave my man EJ Duca out. Man, like, bummer there. And on top of it was Blake Christian, which is even worse. But missed the judge. Wish he was there. Otherwise, nothing of importance happened from the looks of it. That said, this show started off with, and this is something that I think needs to be noted here. How often does MJF come out for that first pop on the show? Like, for these pay-per-views, it feels like he's always opening these shows. It's something I've noticed. Even going back to when he was the world champion. Remember when they did the tag team run? He would open the show and close it.
Yeah.
This man is a master politician. I think we need to give him some props for that. always coming out for the first big pop of the night. MJF doing his thing there.
And he faked it this time too. He pretended to give it to Hangman, and then he took it back.
That's right. Absolutely. He faked coming out to Hangman's music here, and then came out to his normal stuff. So this match, they started off with a quick brawl, pretty much. Then they really quickly go to MGF hiding behind the referee. Typical good heel work type of deal there. Hangman drove him outside, hit the moonsault to the floor, and at one point he ran up, and then MJF hit a super kick that left him hanging on the ropes upside down. Then he turned into an Alabama slam, and they did all kinds of stuff over there. They actually did some submission work with MJF where he would do the Salt of Earth and then try to switch into a cross arm breaker. So they did some stuff there. MJF is they go up and they go back outside and they both tease tombstones. And then MJF hits a jumping tombstone onto a chair at one point. And this takes forever. That was a big holy shit spot for the fans. But they drag the drama out, and then finally Hangman beats the count, and MJF is he goes nuts. He's spazzing out, and he's what's so special about you? Why isn't it me? And all of this stuff. And he looks for the heat seeker, but that gets countered. Hangman jumps into the ring, lifts him up into the dead eye, and he hits this insane angel's wings onto MJF, which he took. I have to admit, we've been critical of MJF and his title reign and everything done here, but this bump for the angel's wings was phenomenal. It made this look so dangerous and awesome. I wish it had just been the finisher, because then they did the buckshot lariat to end it. I wish the angel's wings had just been the finish, both because it looked better and because it made more sense for the story with him beating down Daniels in the build-up. What did you think of this opener here?
For the ending, if he didn't try to pin him after the angel's wings and he just hit that and then went for the buckshot, I think you could have just that would have worked way better than having him kick out of the angel's wings, then hitting the buckshot. But I thought this was one of MJF's better matches. I love Adam Page. The man can truly do no wrong, it seems. He's on a hot tear. Something this pay-per-view did right. I feel like it was a few pay-per-views ago, maybe Full Gear, you and I were talking about how they had Adam Page, Swerve, and Will Ospreay all lose on the same show.
Yep.
And how it just felt kind of wrong. And look at what they did tonight. Look at who won and how great it felt. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't like the MJF character work where he was screaming to the crowd, "Why not me? Why not me?" And he pretended oh, it slipped out. Did not do anything for me. Shawn Michaels School of Wrestling.
Yeah, I hated all that stuff.
Yeah, but Page was great. He had a ferocity. The big spots really stood out and were memorable. By the end of the show, I still remembered that Angel's Wings. Like you said, the bump was gnarly. It looked like he took it on his face more than anything else. So yeah, I thought this one was a good opener. I would go 3.5.
Okay, so a 7 out of 10 in the cage match zone. The inmates rated this 8.21. Lots of votes here, 460 votes. Clearly, a lot of people were tuning into this show. I think that this was good. I totally agree with you about the MJF acting, the acting during the match. I'm never into that stuff, no matter who does it, but especially MJF. I think I'm not a big fan. If it were up to me, I would have cut all that out, first of all. And I get his character. Remember when they had that promo a couple of weeks ago, that promo battle between the two? And Hangman said it's like something to that extent, and it made him, like because that's his character, obviously. Like he goes so obvious with it, where he's like not bothered, but he actually is bothered by everything. He's like The Rock in real life, how he is, but as a character, pretty much, where everything drives him nuts, but he tries to act like he's better than everyone else. We get that, but not during, because I thought it was really effective in their promo. I thought it was totally ineffective during the match. I would argue, and I do think it was a little, and that's the thing. I think there's a lot of matches on this show. I think I would agree with you more in that 7, 3.5 star range. It's still a good match, still worth watching for sure. But I don't think it was great. And I think one thing I would have turned down with this is that on this particular show, I mean, there was so much that happened. And I think this was a match where, did we have to have the tombstone on the chair? Like, could we not have saved that for another time? That would have cut off probably 3 minutes right there of this match, and I think improved the match overall. And they could have given it to the women's title match. No, I'm just kidding. More on that later. But I think that if they had done that, this would have been more effective as an opener than how it was. I think they needed a little bit more of a faster pace. I thought this was a slower paced match as an opener. That doesn't mean the match wasn't good. And I am happy to see Hangman win. I'm happy to see Hangman as a babyface. I think they've handled this turn very well. Because he was already getting cheered anyway as a heel. And I love the segment they did where he went into Swerve's locker room, and then the next week he basically addressed it very briefly. And basically said, don't ask that again. Like they didn't just leave it hanging. They actually addressed it. Obviously, the match with Daniels was amazing. And that being the impetus that he lost sight of who he was, and that led to his babyface turn, is really good stuff. Really natural. That promo, again, the promo with him and MJF, I mentioned again. Usually, I don't love all of MJF's hammy promos, but I thought it really worked big there. And Hangman, I'm not a fan of the cartoonish heel character he played for a lot of the time, as much as some other people were. But he got back to where I know he could be when he said, I'm real. That's why they love me. And it's like, yes, like yes, this is what I want. And like they're doing some great things, because I think he is I said it last year, at the end of last year, he was who I said should get the title off of Moxley. It looks like they may go another route with that, but I think ultimately, like, his destiny is to get that world title back eventually. And I think it'll happen this year. Like, I don't know if that's a hot take or not. I think by the end of the year, Hangman will hold the world title in AEW, one way or the other. Yeah.
I mean, I think I won't jump ahead. I'll wait till the main event.
Yeah, the main event we could do a whole episode on in and of itself. MJF, what do you think's next for him now that he's lost?
Happy Gilmore 3. If only. He could go back to feud with Jeff Jarrett. He could.
That's true. That never got really finalized. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, but it's and maybe that's exciting in a way. Maybe he takes another break. Like, you can definitely write him off for. I feel like any time after MJF loses, you can just take him off TV for a bit, and it's not weird or anything. He's sort of has that, like, he does that kind of already, it feels like. But yeah, I don't really know what's next for Paige. I mean, if Swerve is your number one contender, and I think that Swerve does win the world title at Dynasty, here I am jumping ahead, then I think that Adam Page is immediately orbiting your world title scene again. Because what better way to heat back up the promotion than with Swerve and Adam Page?
That to me feels like the all-in main event, to be honest.
Like that with Okada and Kenny?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And like that, I mean, again, who knows what will happen in the months to come? But that's how big that match would feel at this point. But yeah, well, yeah, we kind of jumped ahead with Swerve, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. Really good match though, one of MJF's best in a long time.
This would have been, I think, like, and I say 3.5 because I had to, I do all my ratings after the show. I let it digest for a day. I go back and I rewatch stuff, and I was like, when you compare it to the rest of the shit on this card, I think that this could have been a 4-star TV main event. But when you put it on a card with the level of stuff that was on here, like that's when it kind of drops down,
I think there were a number of matches that should have been saved. Like they did not need to be on this show. Ultimately.
And that's we talk about that a lot with AEW, where it's almost like they give away matches on pay-per-view that they could be using for TV, which is like a weird thing to say, but no one's buying the pay-per-view for Paige and MJF, right? Like I feel like if that's, which is to say, if that's not on the pay-per-view, I don't think that's going to make or break the sale for a lot of people, right? And I think that they can boost and need to boost TV stuff still. So yeah, no, totally agree.
In general, I will say I think recent AEWs have been better. I think things were really going on a downward trend for a little while with Dynamites. But I think ever since they started running these smaller buildings, really since the start of the year, I think we've seen a lot of great Dynamites that they've had. And I think in general, the arrow for this company is definitely on the upward swing at the moment. But yeah, like I said, I think there were a number of matches that could have been off of this show. You could have put on TV or even saved for Dynasty, because there were so many big matches. If they had cut, let's say they saved 2 matches that were on the undercard of this show and then made them big matches on Dynasty, instead of being the first 2 matches. That's a good example where we're going next. Momo Watanabe defending against challenging Mercedes Moné for the TBS title. They did not need to have this on this show at all. Like, this could have easily have been a TV match or saved for Dynasty and been a major, like, they could have kept Tony off of Dynasty and given these 2 that match. And I think it would have came across a lot better because I thought this was like a really good match, really hard hitting. Momo, some of her kicks, she lit up Mercedes with this roundhouse kick to the jaw that she gave her. It was so good. The problem is nobody was talking about this match at the end of the show because of what came after, many, many matches after. And on top of it, they could have used an extra month of building up Momo, in my opinion, because literally the only thing Momo did during this build-up was walk up to Mercedes backstage, swing her bat at her to Billy Starks' approval.
Hell yeah.
And Billy Starks was also here, too. They cut to her after the match taking notes, which...
Isn't it crazy she's getting called up before Athena?
And in a way that makes not a lot of sense in the Ring of Honor canon. Like, so she's not a minion anymore, I guess? But whatever. Like, it's fine. These... I don't know. But yeah, so Billy Starks, she was there. The match ended when Monet hit the Moneymaker into the bank statement for the win, which was like really good. Like I like the Moneymaker, which is a terrible finisher on its own, but I like it as a setup for the statement maker, I suppose, at AEW. But I thought it was a really good match, and like I said, it's a shame that it's so like I said, not a soul was thinking about this match at the end of the show, and it was really good. It's a 7.42 rating. I thought it was just as good as the opener, personally. It didn't have the melodramatic tone of it, but I thought in terms of stiff strikes and like the actual work, these 2 delivered. Like, it was a good match. And it wasn't great like the Statlander matches with Mercedes were, but with virtually no build, nobody knew who this woman was, Momo Watanabe. And they were still getting into her by the end. And I think that's a sign that these 2 won. It took a little while for them to win the crowd, but they did in the end. So I think this has to be considered a successful match and a really good one.
Yeah, I'm going to completely disagree with the inmates on this one. I'm going to go 4 stars. I'm going to go 8 out of 10 on this one. This was my 4th favorite match on the show. When the show ended, this one was still very memorable for me. More so than the opener, more than, a match that is rated much higher than it, for me at least. And I think it is because of its placement being so early that it, like, the whole back end of this pay-per-view is a cluster. And if you were not part of the good part of that cluster, you just got burnt by it pretty much. So I think this coming before that really allowed me to take it in, it was easier. It was easier to digest. I love this. I thought Momo did so well. Like you said, she completely won over the crowd. They were booing Mercedes and cheering Momo, which I thought was super fun. Again, still so confused as to how Momo, out of everyone in Stardom, got this spot. But I'm really stoked for her. I thought she did fantastic. I'm proud of her. Another great defense by Mercedes. This was better than their first match from like a couple years ago.
Oh yeah, I thought it was significantly better.
Yeah. There's something about stiff working wrestlers who will come into certain places and you can tell that they're holding back. And Momo did not seem to have any issues with that, which I was really grateful for. But yeah, no, this was, I thought, one of the best matches on the show. And it really did stick out to me. So maybe, I don't know, but I like the women's matches on this show, I thought were like, I can't really think of another AEW pay-per-view that had a better group of women's matches.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we'll talk about the one later, but I just think everybody was talking about that match at the end of the night, the women's title match.
Yeah.
And deservingly so, by no means. But like I said, I think if this had been given a spotlight role, I think that would have been a lot more effective. But also, let's just be honest about this. This Momo getting the spot makes no sense on multiple levels. Most importantly for me, if you know of her in Stardom, her current gimmick is in an evil stable, basically a cult at this point, centered around Saya Kamatani. And in AEW, she's just a babyface with no actual character whatsoever. And it's so funny to watch her in this role, which at one point in Stardom, she was a top babyface and an awesome one at that, way better than her as a heel, actually. So we got to see a glimpse of babyface Momo, which was cool to me. But in the world of wrestling at large, this storyline is dumb. At the end of the day, for her to be a babyface. And I don't know why it was her, because they had already wrestled. You would have thought it would have been somebody new they would have wanted to get. But ultimately, this match will not be viewed as important at all in the AEW canon. I fully expect Momo to go away and for this match to be mentioned maybe one more time by Mercedes bragging about it, and it won't have any lasting effects. But it's a shame because it was so good. I highly recommend this match. I agree with you. This was a 4-star match, that 8 out of 10 level, in my opinion. I liked it better than the opener, too. And I just thought that it was like I said, it was the example of a great match that won the crowd rather than starting off super hot. What do you think the future is with Billy and Mercedes? What are they doing with this?
Dynasty, hopefully. Because if they're building it up this much, that makes me hope it's a pay-per-view match. And if you want long-term invest in Billy, you do it on a pay-per-view. And there's no one else. And there's no reason you can't do this story over 3 weeks?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't have any problem with that at all. I just think that she's another one. She needs more introductions to the AEW audience. They can't just do like they did with Momo and just throw her out there like that, because she's going to be a long-term part of your future in the women's division. I think they have to take more care to make not just okay. I'm cool with her having the shot at Dynasty, but what I don't want is for her to have her match at Dynasty, lose, and then just disappear in Ring of Honor again. Like, have a plan.
100%. This needs to be a call up.
Yeah, exactly. Like, have a plan for her, and I'm for that for sure. So they talk about all the stuff with Ricochet and Swerve. This whole feud is based around Jimmy Rave's robe, which they mentioned. They have not mentioned Jimmy Rave during any of this on AEW television to this point, or at least on Dynamite. But he wants his robe back. The go-home angle was Nana telling Swerve, "Get my robe back, or I can't do this anymore, boss." And that's exactly what happened. So they come in. They're doing a lot of stuff early on. Swerve also. We had a guy that like drummed for about 10 seconds, and then they just played his normal entrance, like for it. So big time entrance there. It was nothing compared to the Bud B entrance that he had at Wembley, for sure. But they came in. They're doing all kinds of high flying stuff, going in there. And then they do a tease, because I think a big part of this was teasing that Nana would turn on Swerve. So he's beating the hell out of Ricochet, and then Nana comes over to Swerve. It's like, no, stop it. And then Swerve like shoves him away and knocks him down, and they're like, oh. It's like so stressed out about this match. She hates Ricochet. She just hates his guts and wants him to just lose at all cost. But she's going crazy on the outside. Swerve is going crazy because they're really building up the fire in this match. Ricochet hits like this low tier Tiger Feint kick at one point to stop him. They go back inside, and Nana steals the robe, but then Ricochet stops him and then like steals it right back. And then Swerve comes in with a dive. Ricochet catches him with a Death Valley driver onto the floor. Hits Vertigo in the ring for a near fall. Nana goes for the robe again. Finally, he gets it, but they bounce into Nana, and Ricochet finally tries to steal a pin off of that. But in the end, Swerve hits the house call, hits him again with the house call, another house call, and then hits Big Pressure to win. What do you think of this match?
This was my third favorite match on the show, which, if you've been paying attention, I'm sure just made you gasp. But what about the three matches at the end? If Momo was your fourth and Ricochet was your third, and there was three legendary matches at the end, and there's only two more spots. Yeah, I said what I said, and we're gonna get there. I loved this. 4.25 for me. This was like Ricochet has quickly gone. Like, remember when we were talking about, and I was like, Dylan, give it 3 weeks when he got toilet paper thrown on him. And look where we are now. This was Swerve's best feud outside of Paige, I think, like in terms of like, and Danielson. Danielson was a great feud, albeit short. And a little bit weird because Swerve had to turn heel, right, out of nowhere. But, their chemistry was so good. This was a brutal match. I thought that Ricochet's in-ring work has really started to complement his heel persona. Just vicious stuff all around. And yeah, there was a lot of grudge matches on this show. That like almost seemed to be like the crux of most of these feuds, like Takeshita Omega, Tony and Mariah, Ricochet and Swerve. Like there's no like, oh, who's the better one? Like, oh, like a lot of the storylines are purely just grudge matches. Osprey Fletcher. So I think for me, like that was what was kind of hard to stand out and be memorable on this show. But still, like these guys gave a hell of a match, and Swerve was the right pick to win it. I think that if anyone can right the ship, it's him.
Yeah. I think that Ricochet has done such an amazing job as this annoying heel character on purpose that it's elevated like a lot of people's opinions on him. Because I had mentioned it. Um, go back to his feud with Logan Paul in WWE. Like, he cut good promos, and people kept saying that he sucked on the mic. And I said that he did suck at one point. I totally agree. But he had improved by the time he had left WWE. And people hadn't taken notice. In AEW, he was giving such a dry gimmick and a dry run debut that he wasn't able to really do anything. And it really actually made it perfect for how things have turned out. You were 100% right about the angle, not just with the toilet paper, but also that was not nearly as bad as when the Hurt Syndicate had him running away from them, literally, in my opinion. But even then, it totally fits this character. This all changed when he stabbed Swerve with the scissors and set up this hot angle for the year. And he's just done a phenomenal job. And Swerve, we all know what Swerve's about. Like, on the mic, in the ring, everything he does is just so good. I think he's actually gotten to a new level, from where he was before. Because I thought before, I mean, I always liked him. I loved his wrestling. But I thought as a character, he would, again, go a little bit too cartoonish with some of his heel promos where he was like, nobody cares less about human life than I do. And it's like, come on, who talks like that? Now he's gotten much more grounded and more realistic. And I think he's just a great at it. So I think Swerve has benefited big from this feud. Ricochet, obviously, is way better off now than he was before. I think he's done a great job as well. And I definitely think, because people were talking about Nana turning on Swerve to help Ricochet. That would not have been the right move, in my opinion.
No.
I think this was the right call. I'm all for, like, Ricochet going for the title could be fun, but I disagree with breaking up Swerve and Nana. I think they're too good of an act. And they've actually, another thing I like about this feud, it's given Prince Nana way more depth than he had before. With everything about this robe, like, they actually got him into an emotional story. Before, he was just a fun manager who danced a lot, which he's great at that, don't get me wrong. But now he's like a full-blown character with his own motivations, separate from Swerve. And I think that only benefits the entire pairing. And we saw it at the end of the match where, like, he bowed down, gave Nana the robe, and Nana was very grateful, danced again. The crowd loved it. This was awesome. Good stuff all around here. I think it was a great booking. The match was strong. I thought the crowd was into it. Really helped it. 8.58 rating from the inmates here. Higher than the opening match. And was the fourth match of the night as well for the crowd. So we're going to see where you differentiate on later. Oh, you set us up for a big tease. Which match did he not like? Which match did Nello did not like? We got to find out going forward. I would give this about, I don't know. I don't know why that TBS match grabbed me a little bit more, but I think as a total package, I would give this 4 stars as well. I give it to 8 out of 10 myself. Same rating as the TBS match for me personally. So then they go over the build-up to the Okada and Brody King match, and Okada beat Buddy. Now it's Brody's turn. It's basically the build-up to this. His partner's hurt, so he's fighting for an injured partner. I thought this was not effective at all, to be honest. Even compared to the Buddy match, which I didn't think was a great match. I thought they came in, they wanted King to get this huge, like, home state pop, but I don't think that this match really had that much excitement or interest in it at all. And Okada, he's just forever stuck in fourth gear, it seems like. fourth gear away from the fourth gear. Like he's first gear. Like he's barely out of neutral. Like I just, it is what it is. I thought it was a totally average match, and the inmates weren't wowed by it either. 6.86, which is still good. I would probably go lower than that. Like to me, this was like a, it wasn't bad, but they could have done so much more. Like they said, we got like a 3-star match to me. It was like, that's how I felt about it. What about you?
Totally agree. This is one that got forgotten. This almost felt like the Jericho match. It's like we have to get X guy onto the show, right? No matter what the match is or who the opponent is, or really no story going in. And I think it showed like their lack of investment came through in a lack of investment from what seemed like Okada. King had a good showing. I thought the chops were really solid and Okada's chest was ground meat by the end. That's pretty much the only thing I remember from the match. I'd go like 3 as well. Like not bad, but this is about as much as you can do without becoming a bad match.
This was an Okada match, I would say. Here.
Just so sad to say.
Yeah, like that's the thing. Like he showed against Ospreay in the finals of the tournament. Like he can be great, but the thing with him is one great match a year worth like all of this? Like him holding a title and doing nothing of note with it. I don't know.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, I know they teased him at Omega, but there's so many people more deserving of that spot against a major spot against Omega than him. I know there's nostalgia for it. I know they have a story. I know they both probably want to do that match. But it feels a little icky to me that like he's going to sleepwalk his way into a major match at the biggest show of the year. And he's not even trying. Like that's the thing. Like that to me is actually worse than being a bad wrestler. Is like you're not even trying. And I don't know. Like even Gravity, he put his all into that beatdown on the pre-show, Nello. When he got beat down. Of course. He tried his best. But yeah, this was not great. So then we got the Outrunners. Now this was a fine match. Like totally fine. Another 3-star level match to me. It's got a 4.71 rating. Yeah, 4.71 rating. But the thing that makes it bad is that this was totally the wrong match to do for the Hurt Syndicate. Why? Like, okay, I like the Outrunners as goofy characters. I'm totally on your side if you like the Outrunners as characters. But the Hurt Syndicate has been one of their hottest acts. Even during the bad times of AEW, like they're the one act that didn't get screwed up. Like they've always been great 100% of the time since Shelton has come into the company. Why did they not murder these two? Like here, this should have been a 2-minute match at most. Like I know some people want them to have a good match and the Outrunners have their role, and I'm not trying to be mean to them. They have their role in this company as comedy characters. They're not serious contenders. That's not their role. So why are you having these guys push the Hurt Syndicate as much as they did here? Like this barely, like the prior match was barely longer than this. And I thought it was a total failure from that level. Even if execution wise it was fine, but I just thought the tone was all wrong and it was not necessary at all. So yeah, I'd give this like a 2 stars maybe. What do you think?
Okay. I thought you said 3 at first.
Well, I like in terms of execution, it was like there was nothing wrong with what they did here, wrestling wise. But the tone of it all and the entirety of the package was less than that. But it was an average match in execution drugged down by being everything wrong about it, tone wise and context wise.
Let's see. Yeah, this is probably the most forgettable match on the show. every show.
That's a good way to say it. Not
like,
worst. Not worst match, but the most forgettable. I agree with that.
Yeah, and like you need a match that is going like you need a match on a show that is inconsequential enough to where people can use the restroom like a pseudo intermission, right? And this match came right in the middle of the card. So and then it also needs to satisfy the people who are going to stay and watch, right? I think if this was more of a straight up squash, like if this was just a 5-minute absolute ass beating, like I understand that people like outrunners, but I don't even think they needed to get their near fall, right?
No, not at all. They gain nothing from this. They're not tag title level contenders, and they will not be at any point in the near future. There's no way that's going to happen.
No. And so I think that you could have done more for the Hurt Syndicate here, but by no means was this offensive, or I would even say
no, not at all.
This was just a match that happened.
And that's what I said. Like, if you just judge it as a match in a vacuum, it was perfectly fine. It's just the wrong match to have at this point in time. And what you said about the bathroom break match, there's truth to that, but not with the Hurt Syndicate. Like I said, they've been one of your best acts. Like, I think this in a lot of ways was actually like Tony Khan's answer to the criticism that I had at the start of something has to give. So they were setting up for the murder machines to get the tag title shot. And they pulled this total swerve to get the Outrunners in the pay-per-view. I think they want the murder machines to have a big match against the Hurt Syndicate. And it would have gotten lost in the shuffle on this show. So they just said, okay, we'll do the Outrunners instead. But they still should have given the Outrunners so much. And I'm sure that Murder Machines match will be fine. They haven't been built up enough for what they did, in my opinion, to have the Hurt Syndicate screw them over. I think you would have had to have Cage and Archer get big wins first before you go that route, because they're not established enough, in my opinion. I think that, like I said, I like that there's thought put into this stuff, but I just thought they were wrong here. I don't agree with this match, and yeah, I agree. It's not the lowest rated match on the show for the inmates or me, and probably not you either, I presume.
See, I would go 2.5 for me. 2.5 is like anything lower is offensive to me.
Okay.
Is where he starts to teach that.
Yeah, like 2.5 to me is like bang average. That's like a 5 out of 10. Like not, it's totally forgettable. Pretty much like just like you said. 2, I would say, is slightly below average, and again, that's more because of the booking than the match itself, in my opinion. So we go to the recap of Tony Storm and Mariah May. They go through this whole turbulent like feud that they've had, culminating in Tony's win last month after all of the drama of her faking amnesia and all of that stuff. And they go with the Hollywood ending. And I know that we had talked about it last time that we were debating whether the Australia run was a blow-off. And I have to say, in hindsight, I'm so glad that they did this match.
Yes.
Like this was a great match. To me, you look at these two, I think there's been a lot of ups and downs. I didn't think that Australia match, and to be honest, I feel like this match justifies my position on the Australia match, because this was a phenomenal match. And I thought this is what they had the potential for, but like the other ones just never really grabbed me that much. And their feud, I thought, was mostly not what I want out of wrestling overall. But then you see it play out in this match. Going on here, they come out with Luther. Mariah jumps her. They're brawling on the start of the stage. I thought it was like the perfect start of this match. Mariah pulls out a taser gun at one point. Luther gets kicked in the balls. There's just chaos going on in this match so much. They go on. Tony goes for a running hip attack, but Mariah jumps out of the way of that. She ends up grabbing Tony, hitting a Storm Zero on the steel steps, and then grabs a steel chain. Tony's run the blade at this point, and she ends up tying up Tony for the Tree of Woe and hits her own hip attack. And then they do the Taipei death match spot.
Dude,
I know you love
that. I was howling. I fucking love this. And the fact that it was champagne bottle glass, like,
that was
cinema.
Yes, that's absolutely right. They had two buckets with broken champagne bottles in them. They do the Taipei deathmatch spot, and they go crazy with the fist. Mariah gets dropped. The broken glass gets poured out. Everybody's bleeding like an insane amount here. The Muda scale is going off the rails at this point. Mariah gets up, goes to the top, and hits a Frankensteiner into the glass, going in there. She picks up Tony, glares at her, and then hits the Mayday into the glass. Near fall. Storm fires up, hits the Storm Zero, still another near fall. And then finally, Storm grabs the shoe. And the crowd chants that you hear a loud shoe, shoe, shoe chants. But then suddenly May hits the Mayday on the top of the stage. And that's a near fall. Tony gets up, blasts her with the shoe. Everyone's a bloody mess. There was an incredible camera shot too after the Mayday where they zoomed out. Had just showed Storm covered in blood here. This was this was not all about Eve. This looked like Psycho here in the shower here, like with this. And there wasn't no chocolate syrup this time. No, it was real blood. She nails her with the shoe one more time, smashes her with the Storm Zero through the Hollywood sign, and wins the match. This was a match of the year level match to me. One of the best AEW women's matches I can remember seeing. And then they pan out, the screen goes down, and you see the end. I think the criticisms of this not being the main event is so accurate. Like, how different would we feel about this show if this ended the show? Like, that should have been it. The end should have been the end of the show. Like, they should have faded to black. That should have been totally it. And as it is, it's still a phenomenal match. That takes nothing away from the efforts. This is by far the best match in either woman's career, and I thought it was just a fantastic death match here. Like, this was like a death match ultimately, and I thought it really worked. And not only did it work, they put so much thought and care into this that all of my criticisms of it, it's like it's justified now. Like, you know, like everything I thought was bad before paid off in a way that made it great. And like, this to me has to be considered one of the greatest AEW feuds of all time at this point.
Yeah. You know, I've championed this for a very long time. I cannot believe this was only 13 minutes because it feels,
that's the crazy.
When I remember it, it feels so much longer in a very good way. And yeah, no, you said it perfectly. The fact that this wasn't the main event, they had the perfect go home image and they chose not to use it, which is beyond me. It's like this weird obsession they have with having to have the men's world title main event simply because it's the men's world title. I think we saw that change a little bit when Orange Cassidy and Moxley main evented, right, with the international, but oh well. And if there was ever a time for the women to main event like this is the main event match. This was my favorite match on this show. This is my third favorite match of the year behind Saray and Syuri and Goto Saber.
Yeah.
I loved this. I loved everything about it. It was cinema. Deathmatch is art. It's going to be very interesting to see what these two do next. And I think that this is a Swerve and Hangman sort of thing where whenever they reunite again, it will be fire, whether it's together or in opposition. But I think that this is something that you can definitely, you know, build on as we go through the years. These two are sort of. It's interesting when you put such a definitive ending on a story, but by doing so, you sort of bond two people together, right, for their careers.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that these two will always be linked now. Not dissimilar from, Hangman and Swerve in a lot of ways. In my opinion, I think that this was a total success. And I just thought it was just amazing. Just a phenomenal match. Everyone will talk about this show, and I think this is a match that people will remember most from it, even more than the Cage, which is very close to the rating, for sure, for the inmates. And I love the ending too of her reaching over and holding Mariah after the match ended, as the credits rolled or whatever. I thought it was such a great story. 9.50 rating on Cage match.
Also, the amount of votes, it pretty much has 100 votes more than pretty much any other match on the show. So the fact that it still maintains such a high rating, crazy impressive.
Absolutely. Just an incredible match. And totally deserved. I would totally, I would give this everything. This was, I just wish that it had more time, honestly. I do think that they could have used a little bit more, but they fit everything possible into it as well. But I think that may be something, that critique may be more on the wrestling world at large. Maybe more matches should be like this, where it's all action, 13 minutes is fine, and a worthy main event. But the problem is everything is, conditioned to go longer, and especially at this show. I wish it had gone longer so the main event could have gone shorter at the end of the day. But it's up there in terms of match of the year. I think the top three for me would be the exact same as yours. I would have the Goto match above Sorry and Shuri, but that would be the only difference. On Cage match, the only two matches higher rated are Sorry and Shuri and Gabe Kidd and Kenny Omega, which I like that match, don't get me wrong, but I wasn't as match of the year. I wasn't on that tip the way some people were at the end of the day.
It's not even in my top 10 right now.
Yeah, exactly. I like that match, but that wasn't any close to this.
Match is history. Get out of here.
Yeah, that's all. But yeah, great match. So, after all of that, we move on, and man, this was just a crazy amount of all action on this show. But they to start with, they recap the Takeshita and Omega feud here, and they go to a bunch of all of this stuff here. And they really, like you said, we kind of talked about this a bit when we were talking about the show. We previewed it a little bit. It feels like the storyline's been going on forever, and they've only had one match at the end of the day up to this point. So the international title, Takeshita defending against Kenny Omega. They start off brawling with forearms, and they go outside with stuff going on there. Don Callis comes in, interferes, and gives Takeshita a little bit of upside. They start with some tables on the outside, but Omega fights them off. They go for battling on the apron, and Takeshita ends up throwing him into the barricade, and they're going crazy at this. They're like, "Oh my God, his diverticulitis." Don Callis says the piece that was cut out of him is the part that absorbs nutrients on here, so that shows you the danger that Omega's in. And it feels like Omega's whole career now is going to be this. Every match will be about his rib cage or his stomach. But they go in, Omega ends up hitting a Snapdragon, hits his V trigger, turns that into the power bomb, hits another V trigger, but they both go down after that after the near fall. Takeshita fires up, but then suddenly, as soon as it looks like he's about to do some big things, Omega hits a V trigger, but then his stomach gives out. Like it's too much. They start to go crazy over this. They're like, oh my god, his stomach. And Takeshita, that saves Takeshita from the one-winged angel. Takeshita ends up hitting the B driver for a near fall, and then he hits the big knee strike. Hit that twice actually. Got another near fall out of it. Omega hits a pile driver, and they do the that was like a fighting spirit pile driver. They're both down. He looks for the V trigger. That gets blocked. He leaps up and hits a poison Rana to set up another V trigger. Callis is like panicking. He tries to run in, but then that just causes Omega to grab a crucifix flash pin in the pin, and that gets him the win here. So the stomach was hurt, and they give this kind of like a clean win for sure, but not a definitive one. Like he won with a flash pin, 8.99 rating from the inmates. What say you, Nello?
Yeah, so this was my fifth favorite match on the show. I thought that this did not, like, you had to do a lot to follow Tony and Mariah, and I do not think they did it. I thought their first match was better. I think that this was a good match, not a great match. It just never hit that other gear to me, and it felt like stuff I had seen before, things I have seen them do. And when I watch matches like this, I want to see them iterate on things. I want to see them do new things. And like, I thought the table spot was nice, but again, like, this whole working Kenny's midsection thing is getting old very quickly, just because it's like we're on the inside of it, right? Like we know that it's hurt, but we know it's not really hurt, and that it's not gonna like explode his fucking guts or something, you know?
Yeah.
So like I said, 3 3/4 still really good, but I don't think that this is as great as everyone is saying it is.
Yeah. I think that I don't think this was on the level of the women's title match for sure, the Hollywood ending. And I definitely think they were in a tough spot. You know, they had to follow that classic match. And they were building up to the cage match, which we knew was going to be just bonkers. I think this should have been a match that they could have cut, actually. Like, this could have been a TV main event, or another circumstance, like where if this were the Dynasty main event, don't have it right after the Hollywood ending match. Don't have it on the same show as Ospreay and Fletcher. Although I think that was important storyline wise, that they wanted Omega and Ospreay both to win. So I guess from a storyline perspective, I guess you kind of had to have it at the end of the day. But I would have gone shorter with it for sure. The melodrama on the stomach, I think they're at risk of overdoing it. I didn't have that big of a problem with it, but I do think that it's a red flag that they're going to it so strongly right now. And this is going to get old real quick. Like, you know, they need to pivot away from this very soon, if not immediately. But I thought the work was really strong. I do think Omega, I mean, we saw it in that tag match at Australia. There was that moment with the Poison Rana where he messed it up in that tag match, and that's not something you would expect from him. And there's no shame at all in being a little rusty after he was gone for so long. You know, in that Gabe Kidd match, even if you love it, you also have to admit there was a ton of downtime in that match where people were throwing in chairs into the ring. The doctor was there. He had to attack the doctor. They purposely did that, which was smart for Omega coming back after that long absence. I think he's not quite where he was. And I'm not saying he can't get there. I think that and I think he will get there, to be honest with you. And I think in general, here's how I would describe this match now, and we'll see if you agree with this. It was a very, very good match that. Oh, no, excuse me. It was a great, 18-minute match that went 28 minutes and was in the wrong spot, context-wise.
Yes.
So that makes it more so good than great. And it was still good. Don't get me wrong. It was still good. What did you say? 3 3/4? Because that's what I would have given it.
Yep.
Yeah, but we actually agree on this, to be honest with you, because I was thinking the same thing, and then it was kind of a hot take that I liked the Mercedes match more than this one. But it was still very good, but I think I know they have great in them. And I want to see that fulfilled. And maybe that's what this will lead to. Maybe at Dynasty, they'll have a great match, and that'll be the true call-off, or, the blow-off to this feud, and it'll be epic. But as it is, I do have to disagree with the Inmates. 8.99 rating. I don't think it lived up to that overall. So after that, they shoot off this was Cody level pyro they were trying to throw out here, I think, with Omega's title win here. They go crazy. They have him stand in the ring. Callis and Takeshita look pissed. And then they recap Ospreay and Fletcher. Basically, Ospreay and Fletcher were like brothers, but then Don Callis corrupted Fletcher, and that's what led to this feud. And they once again ignoring the first match they had here, but in the canon of AEW, or at least in this version, this version of Kyle is not the same as the old version, I guess. They're 1-1, and this is the blowout. Callis back on commentary here, and they end up fighting early on. They go right to the slugging it out. They go off with a part where he slams Ospreay into the cage, licks the cage, licks the blood. Ospreay running the blade early here. That's another thing. I think if it were me, and I know that they probably wanted it there and it added drama and all that stuff, I think it's really hard to do a blade job on this show when the Hollywood ending was they were covered in blood. And I think you were destined to fall short and it not mean as much. But they countered that by him licking the blood. So that's very sick. The very disease, risk, very high disease risk here. But they go on, and Ospreay starts to take control. Fletcher runs the blade as well. And suddenly Mark Davis runs out, and he throws some weapons into the ring to Fletcher, but Ospreay intercepts it and knocks out Fletcher with a barbed wire bat. And Fletcher's like, please don't hurt me. I love you. And he throws up the crown, the United Empire signal that they had there. And Ospreay's like, maybe we can be friends. And then Fletcher hits him with a low blow. Of course. Going in there. And so Ospreay fires back up, hits the hidden blade. Davis just breaks into the cage to make the save. I thought he was conflicted on there and all of this, but he seemed to have no problem rushing the ring here to help Fletcher. So Ospreay fights Davis, hits a big kick, and knocks him out of the cage so they can lock the door again. Ospreay scales the cage, and then hits an os cutter off of it, which was great. Fletcher comes up, grabs the screwdriver, which was a big part of all of Callus's feuds, pretty much. Nails him with the screwdriver, and then he's like, "Nah, one's not enough. I gotta try it again." So he waits for it, tries to get him again with the screwdriver, and Ospreay ducks it, hits the Styles Clash. Fletcher's like flailing around, being a great like stooge heel here. I love this spot where it's like he went from shit talking asshole to pissing his pants in fear, which I think is the mark of a very fun heel character that he plays. They come in. Fletcher hits a brainbuster onto the chair, which we saw before. Thumbtacks are in, and that he looks for a suplex, but Ospreay flips over into a Hurricane Rana, hits a Styles Clash on the tacks, and then Ospreay nails Fletcher with a screwdriver. They go up to the top of the cage here, and then they fight. And I didn't think they were going to do it. I thought it was just going to be a tease, and then they would fight off and do something else. But no, through the warped mind of Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher, Ospreay delivers a one-man Spanish fly off the top of the cage. I was amazed by this, but even more so by the crowd reaction. Because you would have thought this would have been like, as soon as he flipped off the cage, everyone would have went insane. Like this would have been like the pop of the night. But it was kind of like they were afraid for them. Like they were like, they couldn't react as big as they would have or what they deserved to, because they were like, oh my God, did this guy kill themselves? Ospreay took it right on the hip too. That had to be so fucking painful. Man, that was nuts. And then to end the match, Fletcher, the Heartbreak Kid himself, he's like, I hate you. Fuck you.
Dude, I loved this. It's like the complete opposite of Danielson screaming, I love you. I love you so much. Like at his family. And then I'm pretty sure Fletcher literally said, I hate you. Yeah. I fucking hate you. You son of a bitch. Fuck you. And then he got knocked out, dude. It
with the hidden blade.
Perfect timing. Like right after the fuck you, Ospreay just punctuated it so well.
And then the Tiger Driver 91 ends the match for this roller coaster of an effort. What did you think of this? 9.48 rating, just 0.2 lower than the Hollywood ending from the inmates.
I would give this and Hollywood ending both 4.5.
And I gave them both 4 3/4, so I'm even a little higher on them. Yeah.
Wow, that's rare. That's rare that you go higher than me. I feel like at least when we get to this level, Yeah. While you're playing with fire, Dylan, getting a little closer to a 5 there. Dylan has not given a 5 since Hiroshi Tanahashi in 2004. So,
no, that's not true at all. Listen, I gave a 5-star to that Sting retirement match at the last year's Revolution. So, come on now. I gave a 5-star to the Goto match as well.
Oh, fair.
That was all good though. Very, very good stuff. And also Shuri and Julia, I think, was my last 5-star before last year. That was like a couple of years ago. So you could easily go years without me giving a 5-star, to be fair. So 4 3/4 is like 5. It's like 6.5 for Dave, I would say.
The casual Dave 6.5. Yeah. Dude, the only thing that I really did not like about this match was Mark Davis getting busted open. It felt comical with how many people were bleeding. Like it didn't give the effect of like, holy shit, this is warfare. It was like, okay, you didn't need to do that too, dude. Come on. Like it's not a party. Like this is a match. Like, come on. I thought
his whole segment was like totally unnecessary. Like to be honest.
Yeah, no, totally agree. Other than that, loved it. Just this is pro wrestling.
This is so good. Like this is such a fucking great match.
Yeah, it was great. It was great.
I couldn't believe how good both this and the Hollywood ending were on the same show. I mean, it's so crazy that the main event got so much talk. It's so sad that what happened. with how it turned out. But
So, question: if Hollywood Ending main events, it goes on after this.
Yeah.
Does it suffer from that?
That's a great question. That's something I haven't heard anybody really talk about, because I've heard some reviews, I've read some reviews, but I haven't seen anyone bring up that point. Because that was a big problem for me in this match. I think that they should have just dodged the blood entirely until the end with the screwdriver. Instead, Ospreay ran the blade 2 minutes in. He was already busted open. That's when they licked the blood off or whatever. I would have, and I think that hurt this match in terms of the blood effect. But other than that, I think there was so much action in the Hollywood Ending that and the blood was that much more than it was here too. I think it would have survived fine. I think it still would be looked at as a classic match and one of the greats in AEW.
Yep.
But they both deserved it. Even if this had been the main event, I think it would have been a worthy main event and changed the narrative on this show as a whole, I would argue. But yeah, hell of a match. What an ending. And there is a part of me too that's I will say this, I kind of wish that the Spanish Fly had just been the finish. I'm with you that Fletcher, again, I love how he walks the line between shit talking, asshole, and piss your pants heel. But that Spanish Fly was so crazy. I wish that it had been in there. That's one of the best spots in AEW. History, I would say. And yeah, that's just my opinion. Where do you think Ospreay goes from here now? Because to me, he's a great candidate to get the world title in a perfect world, but the booking doesn't seem to be going towards that.
Man, because he would be put in the same position again where he's going against Swerve.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
How do you have him lose twice to Swerve?
And Hangman's in the thick of things too.
He's been linked with Omega a lot. I could see you going to him versus.
They've never had
Omega.
They never had the third match in their series either.
No, and I think that and then starting to build up towards Okada after for Omega.
Yeah.
That's a good little trip to June or July, right? Is it June or July all in?
July.
Yeah, we got 3.5 months till then. So you could definitely run an Ospreay and Okada program, but
I'd love to see Ospreay and Okada actually go for the tag belts.
Ospreay and Okada or Ospreay and Omega?
Ospreay and Omega, yeah.
Okay.
I thought they did such a good job in the Grand Slam Australia that I think that's a main event level match if they do it right. Hurt Syndicate versus these two, to me, that's a worthy main event.
That would be great.
Yeah. Now, that could take a little time for it too. You could have Omega try to go to be double champion. Keeps Ospreay at bay for a little while and occupied, because they'll have to set something up. I don't know who that would be. Overall, I do think both Omega and Ospreay, and this is going to be a big test for this booking, Tony Khan and whoever else is helping with this. These two need to be away from the Callis family. I think they need to move on. This was as definitive of an end as you could possibly have for Ospreay and Fletcher. He doesn't need to be messing with these guys anymore. He needs to find something else to do. Omega Takeshita, they could have another one, and definitely me and you definitely want to see that. But I think Ospreay, at the very least, needs to be away from the Callis family.
I totally agree. I think everyone should be away from Don Callis.
Just everyone in general. It should just be the family one day. But after that, we get one of the most talked about spots on this whole show. So they've done some big promotion for this Queen of the Ring movie, right? On Wednesday,
dude, it made $380,000.
Well, look at look at how look at how this segment went, where the director, Ash Avildsen, was basically begging people to come see this movie. He's like, "This is an independent movie. We need people to see it. We've only got 4 days left before they pull us from the theaters. Please see our movie, please." That's basically how it looked like, how he was talking during all of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just didn't come off great. I felt like his other appearances were better.
The Wednesday one was actually pretty funny, like where they had like Timeless Tony that suddenly turned him into like a weirdo, like timeless Ash Avildsen. I thought that was actually really charming.
I haven't seen the movie yet. I'm excited to see it when I'm able to. Just been busy, but it's
Let's do a show about it when we do it. Movie review.
That'd be fun. That'd be fun. Little Mildred Burke review.
Yeah.
I have one of her matches against like Mae Weston, I think, something like that.
Yeah.
We could watch that. But
yeah, I mean, they've got a lot of different. There's a ton of wrestlers in the movie too. Yeah, like, you know, so you have a lot there. You've got Camille's in there. Tony's in there, obviously. Mickey James is in that movie. Believe it or not. Naomi's in there. Jim Cornette is there. He was on the red carpet. They had a little bit of everyone for this movie going in there. But yeah, I've done a lot of research on that for the Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame. I definitely think June Byers deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. She's always on the ballot every year. She's very like influential at that time, but yeah, I'm sure the movie's good. It's got a good rating on Rotten Tomatoes at least. So we'll see what happens. But anyway, this segment though. So they've got Kelly Berglund and Damaris Lewis here, who are both in the movies. I think that like this whole thing was so messed up. It's clear nobody put any thought into it. So they interview Ash Avildsen, and Tony Schiavone's there. And then Ash is like, "Hey, look, we got these there in the movie. Why don't we talk to them?" type of deal. And Tony Schiavone's like, "Oh, yeah, sure." Do you think that's because nobody actually told Tony Schiavone that they were there, and he didn't know who they were, and he was just like, "Oh, yeah, sure, you, the actresses, of course, yes, let's talk," because that's kind of how it came across. And so they go up to Damaris Lewis, and she's cutting a promo about the movie, and it's like, "Oh, it was amazing to work on the movie. Wrestling's amazing, and thank God, because you guys know all the winners before everybody else does, and that's what wrestling taught me." What?
And now it's time for your main event.
Oh, the crowd groaned at this. You know they hated this. This has been already like sent shockwaves throughout Twitter and the internet and everyone. You mentioned, right, because we had actually both I saw this too, that she was trying to do a quote from who was it? It was a quote from an old wrestler, the person that she played in the movie. And like on the pre-show, I watched the interview that she had where she actually said it right. Babs Wingo, like it was a quote from her, and it came across so much better. Like in the pre-show where she said it the right way. Here she just basically said, "Yeah, this whole wrestling show, that's all a bunch of bullshit. You guys know that, right?" And everyone was like, "Oh my God, how could they say wrestling's fake live on the show?" Here's the thing with this though, Nello. Like, you can tell me if you agree with me or I'm wrong or anything like that. And all the listeners out there can tell me if they agree with me or not as well. Yes, this was bad. I'm not saying it wasn't bad. I'm not defending it in any way whatsoever. In any way. But is this more disrespectful to the business and more like reality and immersion breaking, her saying this, compared to the main event in which there were 20 run-ins, a man cashing in a contract in the middle of the match, and everything else that came with that. Like, what is less realistic at the end of the day? Her saying this or all of the bullshit that was on this show, and particularly in the main event? That, to me, is immersion breaking. In my opinion, that makes wrestling look faker than her saying this, in my opinion.
You really want to talk about this main event, don't you?
I hate this match so fucking much. Like,
shall we?
Okay, but her saying it was funny to me, not offensive, in my opinion. Do we agree
I
with
just like laughed and then I moved on.
Exactly. Like, but there are these guys online that are like, AEW's ruining the wrestling business. How could they let someone say wrestling's fake on their show? And all of those goofballs. I mean, it was bad. Like, it was bad. Like, I'm not saying it wasn't. But what was objectively awful was the main event. Cope, the man who's never drawn a dime outside of one time where he threatened to have sex live on television in his entire career, is in the main event once again through politicking.
Fuck.
And on top of it, he's also the man who has not lost to a single man in AEW and would not lose on this show. Cope Hogan will not lose in AEW, my friends. He's got too many people to block on Twitter because they didn't like this match than to do a job to any young talent that he says so many times that he wants to help the young talent and elevate the young talent. This bullshitter comes into this show. He's been the main event.
This bullshitter. Oh my God. Please keep going ahead.
Okay, let's go about it, man. Like, this guy comes in here. He talks about how he wants to help the young talent. He comes in, doesn't do a job to anybody, wins the TNT title, and breaks his leg because his dumbass jumped off the top of a cage and landed feet first for some reason, which even like a wrestling school trainee wouldn't do, by the way. But for some reason, he did that. Injured himself forever. He finally comes back. What does he do? Get right back into the main event scene. By the way, in a storyline that we were told, Nello, like, remember this, when the Death Riders started, everybody came and said, the people, well, not everybody, a lot of people knew that this sucked from the start, but a lot of people came and said, Fox, this story is about elevating the young talent. Fox's promos, he was schizophrenic a lot of the times on his promos. But one of his big angles early on was he wants to remake AEW in his image. He wants to help the young talent be the best they can be. He wants to motivate them through violence, pretty much. That was what he was going through. Everything fell apart with this Death Rider story. I admit that. And I will give Cope credit for this. He had this interview recently where he basically said, this Death Rider story sucked. Like, nobody knew what it was about. And I didn't even understand it, so I changed it to make it easier to understand. And he was right. Cope was right about that. The changes he's made has made this story better. I will agree. I thought the angle at Dynamite, I don't know if you saw this match, though, but him versus Yuta, I thought him shaking Yuta's hand was one of the more interesting ways they could go about the build up to this match, rather than just taking Yuta out like the rest. I thought changing it from a vague, like, the thing is, Mox probably had an idea in his head, but he didn't have anything beyond that. He had an idea, not a story. And that's why things floundered so much. But Cope changed it to more, okay, I'm taking out all the heel faction one by one. I tried a true story. Everyone gets it. It works. You had the Jay White element in there, which has worked out okay, I would say. I'm far from a fan of Jay White's either, by the way. But I think he's done perfectly fine in this role. He's done pretty good, actually, I would say, as the sidekick babyface character. But this guy comes in here, taking over a storyline about the young guys to get the main event, and you can't even lose to Mox? Mox won't lose the title. His storyline's a fail. Cope won't lose. He shouldn't be anywhere near the main event scene. There's no way he should be going for the world title in AEW in the year of our Lord 2025, Nello.
So this is something I'll say real quick, right? Yes, Cope was not the one to take the pin in this match, and I mean, because Christian got choked out, but like, I don't know. To me, like,
that might have been the best part of the match was when Christian ran out. That's the worst part of this whole thing. Well, that might have been the most exciting part.
For me, the Christian thing has been a very dark cloud over this main event scene because he just is never booked as a main event guy.
Yeah,
like it's classic Money in the Bank, like booking, right?
And why does AEW need a Money in the Bank in the first place?
Yeah, they have the briefcase so we can treat them like shit all year, right? Because at least they have the briefcase. So to me, it's kind of felt like Swerve should be winning the title at Dynasty. It kind of felt like killing two birds with one stone. And if Edge gets pinned, it's way more definitive, yeah. But I don't know. Like I personally didn't mind so much that Edge was not the one to take the pin. Like it felt more like putting a nail in the coffin that was Christian sort of looming over this world title scene for almost like what feels like a fucking year.
Yeah, at least a half year.
And like, and I say that in terms of like him like being protected and stuff. Like to me, he still looked like a geek because he's
that's the problem.
Taken out like that, right? And I'm talking about Cope. Cope to me still looks like a total geek. He came out of this match as a geek, so it didn't feel like they really protected him in that sense.
Well, I think that nobody could actually look good because the Death Rider story is so bad. You know, for all the negatives of Cope, I think, like I said, I think he's improved the story from a booking standpoint. I don't think he should be challenging in main events in AEW again. You look at the caliber of action on this show, and even if you take out all the stupid stuff, if you just watch this match as a match, they were nowhere close to the kind of action that we saw on this card. And this is not what AEW should be at the end of the day. And I think that's my biggest problem. All of this is not what AEW should be. Money in the Banks, Edge main events, Mox with the title. This all feels like bad. Like if this exact same match happened in WWE, people would skewer it even more. Because it's like, this is like 2012 WWE, like one of the worst eras here. And they start off, getting into the match itself. I will give Cope this. He does have a banger theme song, no doubt. The fans sing that hard. They start off in this blood feud by circling around each other with no actual sense of urgency between them. Copeland knocks him out, goes for a climb to the top and does like his dive too is like one of the worst. I would have to say another thing I hate about Cope is that dive he does where it's not really a plancha. It's just he just lands on his feet like and hopes that the guy catches him pretty much. It's like he dives forward but stands straight up and hopes that he catches him. It's such a lame looking dive. Why do you do that, Cope? At the end of the day. They cut to the ops watching this. Why? What was this all about? They claimed that it was because the Death Riders have the trios belts, 2/3 of which are injured and written off right now. But now that's a question in and of itself. Why are the trios belts not used better? That's a good question, I would argue. But this made no sense. But it's fine. We got to see Samoa and Shibata and Hook on pay-per-view, so that's good. Copeland hits a lifting DDT at the end, and then locks in the crossface or the grindhouse that's another thing Excalibur yelled. He's like, the grindhouse is in. And they come up. And by the way, this crowd was totally dead for this match. There was no heat to this early part of the match. I just want to say that. Moxley ends up pulling the mats off. He hits the Seth Rollins stomp onto the concrete. Throws him into the ring, hits a pile driver, but that's only a near fall. The referee, Cope had the chair, and the referee grabbed the chair. Then he knocked Cope into the referee, and he hits the paradigm shift, but it's a visual pinfall. Uh, Mox is like, all right, screw it. Like, I'm gonna hit you with a concerto. But then Cope hits a big boot to the chair. Then that leads to Yuta rushing the ring, hits the Busaiku knee. Okay, this is another problem I think we should have a discussion about. Yuta. What is he gaining from continuing to do the same thing over and over on here? Because he didn't even hesitate. Like, he just ran in and immediately hit the Busaiku knee.
What was the point of everything else that we just saw?
What was the point of any of this? I mean, I guess that's a wonderful question to have. But I think for Yuta, they at least opened up a potentially interesting avenue. Another thing, I hate to rag on Cope even more. How stupid was that Yuta match? Even though I like the end result of it, that should have been immediately they brawl. Like, he's killed Yuta's friends and left him as the last one left, and they're doing like this technical grappling match. Like, it fit for the ending, yes, but they should have started off with a brawl and then got to. Like, Ed should have gotten him to that, not he just automatically does it. Yuta's character, highly questionable at this point, I would say. Jay White runs in, because we haven't had enough yet. He comes in, grabs the briefcase with the belt in it. He goes for Mox, but then accidentally knocks Copeland out. That leads to a near fall with the ref back. Jay and Yuta brawl backstage. Then suddenly, Cope hits the spear. Then he hits another spear. Then he hits another spear, and Seth's about to win the title, but suddenly the ref gets pulled out. Another groan-inducing moment here as Christian pulled out the ref. Christian knocks out Copeland, and he signs it. I thought this was like so embarrassingly bad. Like all of this. I totally get what you were saying. Christian has been a bad part of all of this, and not because of any of his doing. Just how they book him and him having the briefcase has been a bad part. They had to get around it somehow, some way. I just thought this was such a lame, like, nonsensical way to do it overall. It's like, but I mean, I guess it's okay because we're getting closer to the end of all of this. So I guess just deal with the stupidity of all this now, because it obviously makes no logical sense for someone to cash in now instead of just wait for Cope to win the damn title, then cash in, and you could just win. Like, there would be no three-way. Nobody could choke you out. You would just win. But instead they did this. Christian ends up hitting a spear on Copeland for a near fall. He hits the kill switch, but Mox gets up, locks in the bulldog choke on Christian. He passes out because he also couldn't do a job. He couldn't tap out. These 50-year-old guys, that's what AEW is really about. That's what this show told you. It's not all that stuff we talked about before. AEW is the home of 50-year-olds that will not do jobs. Like, that's what they want you to know. I thought this was an absolutely putrid match in execution and booking and context and everything. This was a negative 5-star match. One of the worst matches in the history of the company.
Wow.
I thought there was no redeeming value to this match. Tell me what was good about this. Like, even a little bit good. There was nothing.
I liked the first 2 minutes where they started with just like forearm battle right away. Because they knew there's no building up to shit in this match. Like, if we work a slow opening, we've already lost this audience. We're going to lose them even more somehow. So I appreciated that they jumped straight into it. And then after that, it fell the fuck apart. I don't like, and dude, I'm a Moxley apologist, so don't get mad at me.
I like Moxley.
But Moxley is not inherently doing bad in-ring work here. I thought that Cope was pretty atrocious, but it's just that what Moxley is doing is so painfully uninteresting. And that's what's breaking my heart, because he used to be so inventive and so creative and so destructive. And now it's just like autopilot. It feels like maybe like, I don't know if he doesn't even like the position he's in right now and he just wants it to be fucking over, but it doesn't feel passionate like his old work used to feel. And that's a bummer. But,
he used to be great. Like, I have a lot of respect for Mox as a wrestler. Like, I hope people don't think otherwise about that because I hate this run and this match. And the whole story, like all of this storyline has just been awful. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They had one good night where they killed Bryan Danielson. And that felt like something interesting, even though I really didn't like Utah's role in that. I still don't agree that he should have turned heel on Bryan. But, another thing here. When he ran into, they went back to, like, they were like, it's Stockholm Syndrome. And it's like, that's not what's been happening, like, the last month or two. Like, yes, at the start, they tried to do that, like, you know, he was kidnapped and bullied and like they basically bullied Yuta and had no respect for them and just viewed him as a geek loser. But the last couple of months, Yuta's been an active heel, like there's not even been any dissension between anyone except for when he shrugged off Moxley. And that's why I like the ending of the Cope and Yuta match, even though I thought it was built too all wrong. I like that they gave us a storyline potential coming to it with Yuta and Mox. But they just blew that off to go back to something that ended 3 months ago, seemingly, with the Stockholm Syndrome deal. But Moxley's good. Like, Moxley's a good wrestler, can definitely be a great contributor. But this Death Rider stuff has got to end, man. Like, that's all there is to it. And, you know, like you said, functionally, it's not like his execution was bad. I think the psychology, whether you want to blame Cope fully for it or split it 50-50, I think that was all just awful. And I think that it made the match very poor. Like, it has to be a 0 out of 10 cage match for me. I think this was like, remember that MJF and Jay White match? That was to be one of the worst matches
yes.
in the company history.
You hated that. That was some passionate hate.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this was, I actually think there was more sense in that match than this one. Overall, I wouldn't say it's better per se. I mean, God, it's up there. Like I thought this was a really, really, really bad match. Like actively bad. Not even like, you know, I didn't like it. Maybe there was a botch in the match or a wrong guy won. It's like there was nothing good to me about this at all. So just a shame overall. And I mean, hey, listen. It's not just me that hated this match. Now, have you seen these cage match ratings?
Dude, and this is what's crazy is like, so the morning after there was only 100 votes and it was at like a 3.48. And I was like, okay, damn, that seems a little bit excessive. Like, I'm sure it'll go up to like a 4 something. It went down. Yeah. It went down. The inmates are rioting with this match.
Man, like I said, well, what would you give it then? You said we were all too hard on it. Well, what would be your score?
I gave it a 2, but It sounds like I wasn't hard enough on it. And also, this was at the end of the pay-per-view, and I was pretty checked out for some of this.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I think that might be like a saving grace for it. But it's actually like a curse and a black mark on the whole show. I feel like this match will be remembered as much as the Hollywood ending. Like, there's a chance it is anyway. And that's a scary thought. I hope it's not. I hope I'm wrong. And we can all just pretend. I feel like maybe in a year now, Nello, a year from now, you know, I could say, hey, do you remember when AEW was doing that Death Riders bullcrap? And you were like, no, I don't I don't even want to think about that.
So I have a really weird question.
Okay.
AEW realizes that Tony and Mariah should have main evented, right? When you go to watch the replay, they flip the matches. Are you like, okay, cool? Or are you like, no, that's weird as fuck? Because you could do that pretty seamlessly.
That would be interesting. I mean, we'd have to have the people. I think
because
the number of people.
They do that with like collision tapings and stuff like that already, right? And again, it's like, it's after the live taping, they switch and flip things around for the show, you know? But like, I don't know. I've never seen something like that for an actual pay-per-view, but.
Oh, and here's the thing about that, Nello. Like, I am not the biggest Cope fan, for sure. I liked him on Haven. Let me tell you something, brother. You did good on Haven. I will give you that. And I really liked him, actually. I thought he was great before his original neck injury. Like, I think I've said this before. Like from heel turn, rated R, Superstar Edge on, he's not been my favorite. But he is one of Tony Khan's favorites. And we've seen that people he values all the way back to Phil when he was there. He gives these people power and trusts their opinions a lot. There's no doubt in my mind. Edge said it in the interview, Nello, that he had a ton of creative input in that and changed the story around because he didn't like how it was before. And I'm sure that actually, I bet Mox didn't like that. He might have had a vision, and other people may have tried to meddle with it, and it turned out all wrong. And I'm sure that everyone's aware of how unpopular this all is. You'd have to be blind not to be. But do you think that's possible? Now, like, he had a vision in his head at the start of all of this when that night they attacked Brian. Do you think that he had a vision but that got changed?
If he didn't, then why? I feel like, dude, because whoever beat Brian and ended, like, we're here because he ended Bryan Danielson's career. We are here at Cope versus Moxley because the greatest wrestler of all time got beat for the title. How fucked up is that? And that was like,
but what went wrong? Like
4 months ago, 5 months ago,
6 months ago. Yeah.
It still feels like we're on day one of this Death Riders storyline in terms of why they're doing this, what we're here for.
There's been no character growth or story growth in this at all.
Nothing. I would say the only person who's actually benefited from the Death Riders is Claudio. Pac is still the biggest, like, no-show afterthought in the company. Marina has never talked. Wheeler, unfortunately, has to do the same exact thing. But I think Claudio has really gained a lot, weirdly enough. I think that this has just made Claudio seem like a real big bad, which I love. But, like, my worry is once Death Riders is over, what the fuck does Claudio do? But, yeah, man, it's just got to end regardless.
I think you're missing a real key point with Yuta. I think he's definitely gained a lot. Look at how he's grown his hair out since he started.
Oh, my God.
Okay, so the thing is, look at these names. Wheeler Yuta, Pac, Claudio, John Moxley. These are great talents. Like, all of these people are great. When Yuta had his matches, like his buy-in matches to the BCC, I have a Blackpool Combat Club shirt that you got me to buy on there when I gave you a list of options of people I like and that I thought looked wearable. A lot of the shirts are not wearable, especially in AEW's merchandise category. But when he had those matches against Bryan and Moxley where he bled all over the place, those were great matches, man. Yuta is an amazing talent and like a great dude. He deserves better than what they're giving him with this storyline at the end of the day. And now that you brought that up about Mox, I really think you were on the money, but also with everybody involved with it. Outside of, and I will give Cope credit again. I think he has been very involved with this because he's basically got to run it, like run this whole angle, it seems like. But I really think Mox's heart is not in this anymore. But like I said, how did we get here? What changed? Like, who meddled? Did something fall through? Hey, remember when they had the higher power they talked about with the briefcase? The reason behind this damn briefcase in the first place?
Yes. That, and like, I really want to know what that was supposed to be.
Real talk. Do you think it was Shane? And it just couldn't come together.
That's always what I've thought, but I'm like,
yeah, me too.
Like, anti-establishment people, why would it make sense they're working with Shane?
They just want to blow up AEW. What if they're actually all WWE guys in storyline? They want to ruin AEW for WWE's benefit. Which is what they're doing in real life, unfortunately, because, like I said, that's another problem with all of this. Oh, by the way, the show ended with Swerve hitting the Swerve stomp on Moxley through the crowd. Like Nana walked up to Moxley, and Moxley was running away with the briefcase, and then Swerve hit him with a stomp to end the show. Basically, we knew it was going that way anyway. But I think, like I said, if you look at this show, this was a fantastic show, like from top to bottom. But that main event was so bad. Like a lot of the talk, and I think that's the problem with a lot of main events in general, is that a lot of times the main event can control the narrative of your whole show. I think this one was so big, there were so many matches that it's not as bad as it could have been. If this were a WWE show, like 4 or 5 matches, and that was the main event, we'd all be saying like, "Oh my god, this show was horrible!" Like no matter what happened on the undercard. But with so much great action, so many bangers, legit classics, with Tony and Mariah and Ospreay and Fletcher, blowing off some really good stories. Again, most of AEW is clicking so strongly, and that's another thing that makes the main event so sad and so hard to stomach, is because so much great is going on in this company right now. But the actual main event, the thing that this company is telling the fans is the most important thing in the company, is shit. Like it sucks, and I hate seeing it, man. And on top of it, again, this is coming off the heels of the last show that we talked about just a week ago, with the biggest angle in years and decades in WWE, that everyone is excited about and wants to see where they're going next, and is a true like main event angle that everyone wants to see. There's at least interest in it. We had our criticism of the angle itself, but the fact that it's happening is a great thing. And if you make that comparison to this AEW main event angle, it just makes it look even worse. And I think that they really need to just drop all of this, put the belt on. They should have taken the belt off of Moxley by now already, in my opinion. I think that they should have just. It doesn't matter who it is, to be honest with you. Like I even Cope might have been a little bit better if it got away from the Death Riders. That's how much this angle has damaged the company and how bad it is. But I think for sure, if Swerve doesn't win that belt, that something's really wrong here. Like they have to get the belt off of him. Like Swerve has to win that belt.
Yeah. He if he doesn't win and they're really holding out for Darby to climb this fucking mountain, I'm gonna lose it.
That's the dumbest bullshit I've heard in my life. And listen, Darby Allin, one of the absolute best wrestlers in America. Love his talent. Like he's had so many great matches. The fact that that's even a consideration is insane. Like how could you say that? We're waiting for Darby to climb a mountain to get the title back. What? No, that's not how this works. Like if that was the plan, Tony Khan should have sat his ass down and said, "Look, man, you're really hot right now. That match with Ospreay, everyone loved it. They think you're one of the best, and we know you are. Like you've had so many great TV matches in your career. Everybody loves you. Whatever. We are going to put the world title on you. Like the Death Riders thing is really flaming out. We've got to move the belt off of Mox. You're the man. We set it up perfectly. The story is smart. Putting the belt on you." And if he came back and said, "Sorry, boss, I got to climb Mount Everest. Can you hold off for that for another 8 months or so?" I would say, "Darby, you're totally free to climb Mount Everest. You are off the table as the world champion. Like we will not put the belt on you if you do this. Like it's either the belt or Everest. Like that would be exactly how I say it. If you're going to be the champion, then you need to do this now. And if you're not, then you're done. And like at that level, at least for now. Maybe one day, years from now, they can get to Darby, because he is a fantastic in-ring, talent. He has so much in-ring ability. But nobody is worth risking your title for months and putting your plans on hold in a dreadful angle that everyone hates. It's not just me. Nobody likes this. Who is defending this angle? Like, I don't see anybody. Like, even even the most die-hard AEW fans, nobody defends this Death Riders angle. We all want the belt off of Mox, even if we're fans of his, like me and you both are. And we respect Mox a lot, and I still do. This angle doesn't change my opinion of him as a wrestler, but for him to be the champion is hurting the company. It's actively hurting everything, and they need to just take a break with him, take a step back, and get back to where he should be, and which I truly believe they will one day, and he will one day. But right now, it's got to go. Like I said, they should have done it, if not at the end of last year, at the start of this year. Honestly, I would have Swerve win the belt tomorrow night on Dynamite. I wouldn't even wait till Dynasty. Create a Dynamite moment, like kill this angle off for good. I think they should just do it like the NWO in WWE. I don't know if you remember that, but it was literally like, I think Nash had yet another quad tear at that time, and everybody was like in disarray. Like Shawn Michaels was in the NWO, and they wanted to bring him back as a babyface. So they literally just had Vince walk down one day and was like, the NWO is done, and you will not see them again. That's what they need to do with the Death Riders. They need to just have somebody walk out one episode and just be like, the Death Riders are finished. They're never coming back. Let's all move on. And that's just it. I think it just needs to end completely. Give Swerve the belt. Like, don't even wait for it. Like, just do it. That would be my pitch if I were at AEW.
I can't argue with that. I mean, we have glimpses of hope right now. We had some really good matches, and all they can hope is that Dynasty really writes the course.
And if they do it at Dynasty, that's totally fine. But like I said, I wouldn't even wait till then. I would just be like, look, this is over. Like, we're moving on. And yeah. But anyway, I think, what is your prevailing feeling on this show as a whole, like now? Because there was so many great matches on this show, and so many great angles, like so many great storylines that came to a head on this show. But again, the main event was such an albatross that I think it really negatively affects it. But still, this should still be considered a great show overall, in my opinion. And the inmates agree. It's got an 8.86 rating on Cage Match, and I think that is very accurate. Like, I think as bad as the main event was, and as much unfortunate talk that it's stolen from the rest of the great matches on the show, you cannot do much better than that. The Hollywood ending and the Cage Match, they were both phenomenal and deserve a lot of credit. And like I said, we both loved the Mercedes and Momo match. The opener was one of MJF's best matches of the year. Not just the year, of a long time now. Hangman looked great. Swerve, Ricochet, great. Omega Takeshita was very good. We both liked that a lot, even though we might not be as high on it as some others. We still loved the match. And everything else was inoffensive. The Okada match and the Hurt Syndicate, they were fine to below average, pretty much. The main event was the only bad thing on the show, and you had the embarrassing, like, actress breaking kayfabe. That was bad, but that doesn't change the fact this was a great show. To me, this is like a 9 out of 10 to me. Maybe an 8.
No, I would go like 4 out of 5 on this show.
Yeah.
This was one of the better AEW pay-per-views. If it wasn't for the main event, like, this would have been an all-timer.
And that's a real shame. Like, imagine, let's say Darby wasn't climbing Everest, and this was like the actual blow-off to that. Darby won the title in just a regular match against Moxley, and it was just this epic match, and everybody rated it 8 or 9, or it had an 8.94 rating on there or whatever. Like, this would be looked at as an all-time AEW pay-per-view, I think. If you look at it. Yeah. Let me look at the overall ratings for Cage Match for 2025 going on there. I'm looking at some of these here, for AEW anyway. I mean, Grand Slam Australia had an 8.13. And they haven't had any pay-per-views this year besides that. Let's see, what was their last one? The World's End. What did the World's End do? World's End was 8.18. So this is still rated a lot better than most of the other shows at the end of the day. Full Gear 7.82, that was even lower. So Wrestle Dream 8.49, not as high as this. All Out 9.19. So that was the last pay-per-view to beat it, was the All Out, and that was with Hangman and Swerve with the lights out cage. You had Stat and Willow, which was a phenomenal match. That was in my match of the year rankings. Ospreay and Pac, great match, 5.5 stars from Meltzer. So that was a great show overall. So since then, this is the best pay-per-view according to the Inmates since All Out last year, and I thought, deservingly so. So yeah, good stuff there. We'll see where they go going forward. I think the company's in an interesting spot right now, and we'll see if they do what needs to be done with the world title, or if veteran egos and politics drive it, as so many companies have faced in the past, drive it the wrong way. So that was Revolution. Really good to talk to you, Nello. Really glad that we were able to go through it all so in depth. Hopefully you guys out there enjoyed it as well. We had a fun time talking about it all, and definitely enjoyed all of the great ratings on Cage Match itself. A lot of matches had a ton of votes. Lots of good vibes besides the main event, obviously. Lots of good stuff there. Nello, what do you want to say to the people before we get on out of here?
Play deep cuts. That's about it.
Play deep cuts. Look for it. It's going all over the place. What were the systems you can play that on, once again, if people forgot?
MetaQuest 2, 3, and 3S.
Okay, and it's coming to other stuff soon, right? Even on PlayStation?
Yeah, PlayStation VR 2 and oh my gosh.
Is that hit Steam?
Steam PC VR, yes.
Yes, it's not even my game, people. But I know I will not let you down, Nello. We have to get more people playing deep cuts right now. And they, we definitely will all continue that. We'll continue to plug deep cuts on this show for the near future. I promise. We will have the link in the episode on Cage Match and all of that. So it will be very easy to find deep cuts, I promise you, in the near future. But regardless of all that, thank you guys so much for listening, as always. We will be back next week. We've got a little bit of time before Mania, but we still got some shows planned. It's going to be a regular thing. Wrestle Update is not going anywhere at all. We're going to keep doing shows, whether it's for the indies or anything like that. We're looking forward to talking about some new promotions we haven't even talked about before, and all the cool stuff coming up in the near future. It's going to be a bona fide hoot, but the most important thing that you always got to remember is that I love you. And until next time, this has been your Wrestle Update.